what piqued my curiosity was the pandemic in 2020 and how everyone rushed to innovate in healthcare. And then coincidentally, I was a patient as well for a different reason, and I had a scan done, and I was shocked by the kind of archaic approach to treating me in healthcare. Here's a scan on a CD-ROM. It's shocking. And I felt that, how could this be? When everyone else is rushing to innovate and healthcare is still stuck in whatever century, right? And AI.
I think
go for it. Yeah.
I think there's multiple reasons. So first of all, healthcare is extremely complex. There's a lot of little bits and bolts work together in order to be able to deliver some kind of care to the patients. Now, wherever you have a system that complex, you're trying to not change too much. The moment that you introduce something new, you're introducing probably friction, and friction can lead to failure. I see this every time. So now in my current hospital, I'm the digitalization lead for the whole hospital. We're implementing, again, a system that I implemented multiple times, which is the ICU manager. And that it does overall, it makes things better. But to get there, you risk breaking things. And that's why this disruption is healthcare is the last industry where that disruption will reach, because of all of the safety concerns, which are legitimate. And the second thing, and that we must not forget, just like every other, let's call it industry, although my opinion is that healthcare is not an industry, but a system, is that there's stakeholders which are trying to keep the system the same, or the industry the same. With everything new introduced, you risk pushing someone off. Specifically in Germany, that is a very big problem, because the German healthcare system is basically separated into two. You have the out-of-hospital care and the hospital care. And the hospital care is organized by the states, while the out-of-hospital care has an own organization, which is the Kassenärztliche Vereinigung. You need to be part of that team. They have a monopole on out-of-patient treatment. And they are defending it. They're defending their stakeholders. Although everyone knows since decades that the system is obsolete, because it was created during the times of Weimarian Republic. So we're talking way before Germany existed.
That's a long time ago. before Germany was an entity. 1848 exactly. Or something like that, was it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
In this system, like in the 1870s, something along those lines. Those are the two reasons why healthcare is so resistant to change.
Yeah. And okay, so I kind of respect that. At the same time, I can't imagine a more worthy sector when it comes to change than healthcare, because we all need it. And speaking as a patient, I fully embrace technology. But of course, like you said, safety has to be observed and respected as well. So therein lies a challenge. How do we innovate while also safeguarding the interests of patients? How do we innovate responsibly? And then in the heart of all of this is obviously artificial intelligence. And so I use AI much like anyone. But to put in my symptoms, what's wrong with me? Upload a picture. But how do we do this? It's such a big question, obviously. How do we innovate responsibly?
It is a good question. And I think that the trouble or the challenge there is that we have these two, let's say, almost opposing worlds. No, you have the technological capabilities with a very inert system which is resisting change. And unless everything aligns perfectly, the healthcare system will not accept the change. There's many in history, recent history, there's many examples of this, with huge companies starting from IBM Watson Oncology through Microsoft Health Vault, through Google Health. Now Apple has a health division, but somehow we don't see them in healthcare, because they're not dominating everything, although but in theory it should. And that brings me back to the thing that it is not an industry, because they follow industry thinking. It is a system which is there to deliver a certain service to the patient. Now, how do you do this responsibly? That's where my argument with the augmented intelligence comes. You need to do it in such a way that you still have the human judgment in the center of it. It needs to be a co-creation. Not one of them can go. And what the industry does wrong, and when I say industry, the healthcare industry in the sense of the non-healthcare providers, they take oftentimes they take the doctors out of the hospital, and medical knowledge doubles today every 73 days, which means that within 73 days out of the hospital, he's not an expert anymore. And the likes of me are a very rare breed where we manage, and it's extremely difficult to achieve that, where we manage to still be in the hospital, in the healthcare delivery, see what's going wrong firsthand, while at the same time being somehow involved into the co-creation process of this whole new way of thinking about healthcare. And me, it makes me terribly excited, but also it's a tension field where me and my colleagues live in since technology exists.
It's interesting. It's like the way you describe it, it reminds me of digital transformation in other contexts, banking, for instance, and they've all approached it differently. I remember very quickly living in Hong Kong and seeing how HSBC put everyone in a building that wasn't part of the corporate headquarters, and they were responsible for digital transformation, whatever that was. I think it's like a WeWork kind of co-working space. Off you go, held at arm's length. But it's I'm trying to get my head around this. How does this really work in practice, co-creation? What does that really look like? Is it you and sort of, yeah?
Ideally, it looks like probably what you wanted to say. So ideally, the technology which is being built is based on a real clinical problem and then solved together with those who will ultimately end up using that solution. So you can think of it like this. If the development follows just the money, it will never reach clinical adoption, or most won't. When you look at, for instance, that LLM boom, since the LLMs came out, everyone is naturally thinking, okay, you can use them to help documenting all kinds of things, including healthcare. But that is just one of so 75% of the AI solutions focus on that, but that is just one aspect, and everyone is tackling. So I've been using AI Scribe, so a healthcare AI Scribe, one which is CE marked and MDR approved and everything. But it still has the same problem. It sometimes gets the context wrong. It gets when there's switching between languages when talking to the patient, it gets the context wrong. Sometimes I say, oh, my hand has a problem. And the AI scribe says, oh, the patient has a problem with his hand. And similar things. So how it would ideally work is that you base it off a real clinical problem and develop a solution for that problem. Now, it's easier said than done. But I've never seen a medtech company, or very rarely now in my hospital right now. Yes, they come mostly through me and a colleague of mine, which is doing a lot of evaluations for hardware medtech. But you mostly see them siloed off, just like you mentioned, somewhere developing something and then presenting it to you and say, use it. In my opinion, this is the wrong way around. They should follow and help and understand, and through this whole process, learn where the problems are that need to be solved, because that you offer a natural solution to a problem which exists, and therefore you will get invited. This is the logic behind it, and data backs that up.
Yes, it's almost like a stakeholder alignment kind of exercise where everyone is moving in sync, and I can see how this makes it more powerful as a model. What about when technology evolves very quickly? How do you keep up with that? And while also... Yeah.
It's a very good question. Because technology moves exponentially faster. I remember when my father brought the first mobile phone home. And today we're having the whole knowledge of the world in our pockets, available at any given moment in time, which we use to look at cat videos or similar things. The problem is getting the users, the humans, adapting to the technology. And I think although technology can develop very fast, maybe it shouldn't. Wherever it touches a human life, maybe it should evolve only in the speed in which humans can adapt. That's how I see that, because otherwise, imagine giving your latest AI model to a monkey.
Yeah.
He cannot use it. Worst case, he presses a button and says, nuke the whole world, and it's over. So that's what can happen if society or humanity is not ready for what is there. And most doctors just simply don't understand how AI works, what it does, what capabilities it has, and specifically which one it doesn't have. So if you just buy it off the shelf, you will risk patients, perhaps. And that is something which needs to be prevented.
Yeah. And how do you educate other physicians? So you're like a champion of sorts, an ambassador, and clearly ahead of others in terms of adoption. How do you bring other people? We talk about stakeholders, and other stakeholders need convincing. How do you convince others and bring them on board?
The specific problem in healthcare is that there's very many stakeholders. It's not two or three. We're talking from the delivery of healthcare, so healthcare practitioners. That is already inhomogeneous. We're talking therapists. We're talking nurses. We're talking doctors. We're talking pharmacists. We're talking others. Then on the other hand, you have this whole business side of, let's call it business side of healthcare, where you have the management, you have procurement, IT, other departments. And then you have regulatory, you have the state, you have people with a different view on healthcare. It's not about individual delivery anymore, but it's about the delivery of healthcare to the whole society. Problem is that complexity moves slow. So you have the problem that whatever we find out today will reach the university 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line until it makes a textbook, until the textbook gets signed off and similar things. So the real answer to this will be making that education something, or to think of that education, for instance, as was the case with my executive MBA. It is implemented in everyday work and seamlessly integrated into whatever you do on a daily basis. Because like that, you have the opportunity to see where it really is working, where it's not working. It's not artificial type of learning. That's one critic that I have with the Bosnian education system. So I studied in Bosnia, moved to Germany in 2013. I had tons of knowledge, but could not use it because it was very theoretical. In Germany, they had part of the knowledge that I have, but they were very hands-on. So they could basically jump into the everyday delivery right away, whilst I needed a period to adjust. I do think that the education needs to be ongoing, it needs to be natural, and it needs to be seamlessly woven through whatever we do every day and accepted that we do it that way.
It's very interesting. And do you think, we'll talk about stakeholders, but also there are systems within which you operate. Do the systems themselves need changing, or the hospital or clinical kind of context? It seems to me like you're inside the structure, but yeah.
Yes, and that's why I know about those problems. Hospitals and the system in general is very inert. It's very slow to adapt change. So, of course, incentives are one thing. When you look, so where the incentive comes from, that can be different sides. It can be top down, bottom up. That's even besides the point, but the incentives need to be there. When you look at the digitalization process in Germany, for instance, although Germany has the most expensive, so one of the best healthcare systems in the world, but disproportionately more expensive than others who have measurably better patient outcomes when taking into account things like life expectancy and similar. We spend way more money than our neighbors, France, Italy, Spain. All of those people live longer than the people in Germany. Same was true for digitalization. So they created this huge fund, the German Healthcare Innovation Fund, which was topped up to the max. Before that, I was lucky enough to meet the Professor Maya, who was setting it up, the digital radar. So if you wanted to have access to the fund, you needed to do the diagnostic first, similar to how we do it with the STAR map. You do the diagnostic first, you get access to the funds, you do the project, and then they checked again, okay, how much did actually change? And the results were amazing. So what that means is that you need to align the incentives for all of the stakeholders. And that can be achieved but only if it's done in cooperation. And if it is understood that the healthcare system is not an industry, it's a system which exists to ultimately help the patient who is the receiver of healthcare, and not that a certain minister can look good because he made a project happen, or a certain company does huge profits because they monopolized something specific. So it needs to be an altruistic motivation and an alignment for all stakeholders. And in my experience, when you attack the problem that way, it works. And I saw it many times, and most of my colleagues are wondering, and they actually ask me, how come that you have such a close relation to management whilst we are fighting them all the time? And the thing is that also through my MBA, but also through the system, so the STARME framework, I understand that you need to align the incentives for all the stakeholders. And when that aligns, then there's no resistance, and you can, or little resistance, and then you can implement projects way easier.
Yeah, it sounds like common sense, and a kind of, although very difficult to achieve it as well, I imagine. But in any corporate context, if you want to bring them on board, when you have to do a stakeholder engagement exercise and align objectives, everyone is in sync. But in practice, is it not difficult, like in healthcare? I mean, everyone, how do you, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, how long might this take? I suppose it's an ongoing exercise, isn't it, to report back and, yeah.
Exactly. It's an ongoing cycle. I can take the example of my hospital at this moment. I came new to this hospital with the idea to strengthen the respiratory care, so ventilator care, long-term ventilators and similar things. So I'm a pulmonologist and intensivist, so this is pretty much my focus since years. Now, when confronted with a problem of limited resources, doctor's first instinct would be to ask for more resources. So I have a limited pool of resources. The first thing that I can say is, okay, this would work way easier if I would just have 2 more doctors on my ward, or if I would just have a new machine, which is faster. But from the other side sits someone which comes from management and looks at the same problem from a different angle and says, okay, so we're already struggling to cover our costs. And now you ask me for additional costs with no proof that things will work better, faster, because already somehow it works. So why would I do that? And one of the things that I do is obviously I try to give a strategic and economically viable reason to someone from management why we're doing one thing, while I'm doing a quality of care specialization, also strategy reason, to maybe a colleague of mine. With our specific example with the hospital right now, the ICU is mostly is led by the anesthesia, where we have this very specific niche in there. So we need to coordinate and communicate with the colleagues as well as with the management in order to get more people and similar. One pragmatic solution, what I did also and also before, is that I was doing a calculation. Okay, I need to do this many exams with this specific machine in order to start generating a profit. So I was getting the machine by the medtech companies as a probe, pulled my patients in that period, then already had a positive, so already have something profitable working for me, because I was able to get more money in before even buying that machine. Then it's easy to just take that plus and minus and go to the management and say, this is the reason why we need it. And then they sign it off. And by all the experience that I had, it's an ongoing, because also it shifts constantly. It needs to get better. Then there's periods where we have other challenges which we need to tackle. So it's a continuous learning cycle. But I think really the game changer is just accepting. It sounds like common sense, but in the situation, it's difficult to get yourself out of the situation to a meta level, to look at the situation. Okay, there's someone on the other side of the table who ultimately has the same goal as me, but looks at the same situation from a different angle. So the 6 maybe is a 9 from his perspective, no?
Yeah. It sounds very interesting. Is this a model that you can replicate in other systems? So to me, you like this intrapreneur, is that the right word? Like an internal entrepreneur kind of thing. And you have these kind of objectives that align with stakeholder objectives. That gives you the backing that you need in order to keep going. It's a powerful model. And so can you take this and emulate it in other systems, even around the world?
So in healthcare, it is a universal principle. And I would say also overall in management or in overall business, I would say it still works. We had requests for our StarMap AI, so the technological solution that we coupled with our framework for other industries because they recognize the same. And it is also natural and makes common sense because the StarMap framework was based on, so the first layer was literature research. When doing the research, I was researching what do we have right now where we can prove from different angles that this increases your chances of success in business as well as in healthcare. So naturally, when you pull these things together, they feel like they can be applied to multiple different industries because it is true. The underlying principles are universal and are from literature. And then we put a layer of research specifically for healthcare on it so that we added some healthcare specifics like regulatory. Also, other businesses are regulated, but not as strict as healthcare. So this is how this whole model came to happen. And then another layer of experience with trial and error. And this is pretty much how the whole StarMap framework came together.
Do you have a PDF or something or a website landing page that explains the framework? And then I can go to it after this talk or chat, and then I can look at it in more detail because that will really strengthen the piece. So I really like the sound of this. It's something that's very. Oh, that's quick.
It's on our website. So we obviously have multiple sub pages for different stakeholders, for medtech innovators, for accelerators, for investors, because they have focus on different things.
Yeah.
But in the end, and as you can see there, like the underlying framework is the same for all of them.
Oh, yeah.
So the process, the principles, they are in place, they work.
Yeah.
And it's also specifically it has also some visual representation.
It's really good.
Visual, which helps to understand, okay, this is what it actually does.
Yeah. I'm impressed. This is really good. And there's augmented intelligence. Well, okay, I'm seeing here a human-centric. Really, this is what spurred my thinking before our talk. Just trying to think of what I'm about to ask. What does the patient fit into all of this? We talk about maybe management, but you described earlier co-creation. To what extent are patients involved in a process?
There's a specific principle why it is difficult for the patient directly to be involved. And that is called the principal agent theory. So whenever there is a big discrepancy in knowledge of some specific kind between two people, this theory applies, which means when you go to the doctor can tell you whatever he wants. You don't understand because it's so special, so specific, and so much information that you cannot comprehend it in the speed that you might need to in order to understand what he's telling you. Same goes, for instance, for lawyers. When you have a problem with a legal problem, the lawyer can tell you, yes, it's good, yes, it's not. You have very good chances, but you have no clue. Same is true with tax consultants and similar. So whenever there's extremely specific knowledge, it is the principal agent theory applies, which means that an agent so someone else needs to advocate for the one who's actually profiting from the knowledge. What it does, however, specifically with AI, it empowers patients to partake in the exchange of knowledge and information in a way which it makes really easy for the patient to do. Because a patient, Microsoft Health Vault failed because of that, because they expected the patients to upload and upkeep his data in a specific vault that they provided, but the patient didn't know what's important, what's not important, what's a DICOM, what do I do with these images. So they need to have someone on the, let's call it inside, to advocate for them. But AI and technology empowers them to have that continuous communication stream in there.
So how does that work in practice? Do they have access to a portal, like a shared kind of space? And then it's what? Is it like if they put in symptoms or something and then there's a human on the other end, or how does it work?
So ideally, so I don't know if, or I know that something like this at the moment doesn't exist. But there's similar solutions which are trying to tackle that problem. Yeah. Ideally, you would have a central, let's call it dashboard, where the patient gets all the information provided and can provide that information also back to whoever he sees fit. So that's one thing. And the other thing is there needs to be a human in the loop. EU AI Act commands it in order to keep the risk of the AI solution as low as possible. And ethics demand it, because you don't want a machine who takes pluses and minuses and calculates averages, or zeros and ones and calculates averages, to decide on things which have a deeply human, empathic impact. So you need to be able, okay, let's say, just out off the top of my head, patient has problems, he provides it to, let's call it, I don't know, Dr. GPT or GPT doctor, whatever. Yeah. Then the output is in such a format to the patient that the patient can use it. To the doctor, however, it is in such a way that it references, okay, this is the reason why I told the patient this might be a problem. Here's like some differential diagnosis. Maybe you want to take a look into it. And then the doctor decides what to run and what not to run. Because if you ask the AI, it will always tell you, yeah, run a CT, but the CT is radiation. Worst case, do a laparoscopic operation just to see if there's something. So that would be an ideal. Maybe I set it up myself. No, sounds like a good idea. But that would be ideal. That's what follows the whole STAR map principles. Align all of the stakeholders and find a way to get them to communicate in a good manner. The patient can already prepare for the meeting, knows what's important and what not, what to mention, what not. It's already like pre-chewed. I have patients in my private practice coming with GPT. I specialize in my private practice. I specialize in rare and difficult to diagnose diseases. So they come with lists, and then we go through those lists. Some of those ideas are completely out of this world, but others are quite good. So that's where that augmented idea comes again. So I can brainstorm much more if I have the information already prepared for me.
It's a very human approach, isn't it? It's speaking not as an expert, but as an observer. I think it's the best we can do, really, as a principle, to always put the human at the heart of the conversation, if you will, with AI providing support as opposed to the one that drives the whole thing, if that makes sense. It's really, you have a judgment, you have the expertise, but also you have the empathy as well to be able to connect to patients in a way that machines can't touch, at least not yet. But you do need that. I remember I used to live in Dubai and I had a sinus issue. I still have it for some reason. And I went to see a pulmonologist at the hospital, and I sat down with him. I didn't even know what to say. It's very hard. How do you even, and it feels intimidating, right? You know that the doctor basically doesn't have long, right? And so you're thinking, okay, I'm under pressure now. I need to say something. It's like, okay, I've got this issue here, But I don't know, it's just really hard. But having that data is quite helpful in order to underpin the conversation, or at least put it in a certain direction. Yeah.
Guide it. That's the wording that I use. It's supposed to guide decisions. Yeah. And that's also the role that I see a good doctor does it. The first thing that I ask my patients is, how are you doing? Which is already seemingly something that not many doctors ask, but it needs to be a natural conversation. So how does a patient feel? We forget how it is. How does a patient feel, exactly like you described, when he comes to us? If I am sitting in court and I don't know what's happening to me, and it's happening to me, and I need to carry the whole responsibility or the whole consequences of it, it's not a pleasant situation. And that's why I see we do need AI. It will help us, but it needs to be thought the right way. And that's why I don't like that Silicon Valley hype. Oh, this is better than doctors. This is very disruptive. type of thinking, which is okay for an industry, but not for a system like healthcare is. And that's why healthcare needs a reality check.
I like that. Everything you just said, that last sentence, for me, putting my PR hat on, that sounds really good. It's not an industry, it's a system. The approach needs to be different. It's much more human-centric. This is why I'm interested in the first place in digital health and health tech, because at the core is, more than any other industry I can think of, is people, humans, right? And
exactly.
And I feel that, and by the way, and this is not entirely relevant, but I do find when I talk to clinicians like yourself, people with that medical training and background, they are so better at communication than any other startup person I talk to or whatever from any other industry. You have this kind of natural ability to communicate, which is incredible, and it needs to be preserved. And no doubt the AI will become stronger as a result of that. But really, it's that human input that really counts. And it's why we need to strengthen it, enhance it, as opposed to supplant it or replace it.
Yeah, we need to nurture it, because It's also, I wouldn't say it's natural, I would say it's trained. Because doctors go through the same exercise over and over again. You need to explain complex things to patients in very basic words. So you start training that communication. And it was only so the EvoMed, the company, was doing better the moment that I embraced my role as a doctor and not trying to be a consultant. Because in the beginning I was like, okay, it's a consultancy, so I need to be like a consultant. But turns out I just need to be myself.
Yeah.
And that is a doctor primary. And through that, just like embracing it, everything was smoother, easier. People understood what I'm trying to say, and it resonated with a lot of people. And I really am a huge believer, and I fight for keeping the human in healthcare, because ultimately it's not for robots.
No, that's
a mechanic.
Exactly. That could be for other things, transportation or whatever. But really, it comes back to humans. But that being said, where do you see AI headed? Obviously, it's changing so fast. If we were to talk again in a year's time, where do you think it will be?
I do see it heading in the right direction. Yeah. And I do see, maybe because of the inertia of the system, I do see guardrails put in place in order to keep it safe. Ultimately, what will end up happening is that the way we think about healthcare will have to change. It will be different. But as long as it's aiding decisions, it will be the right way. It will have its place. When you think, for instance, at radiologists, so AI is pattern recognition, and today it's better than most junior radiologists when we talk specifically imaging. So that works extremely well. But we still do need people to understand, or who understand, is this something which is rightly interpreted or not? As long as it's supporting the decisions, helping guide the ways to find the right answer, as long as it's a helpful companion. I think of it like Jarvis from Iron Man. Right. So I ask the questions, it helps me with certain things, and then still Iron Man is the one calling the shots, right? Yeah. So this is where I see it going. And so far, I do think that many are aware of the responsibility that they have in that system. And that's why we haven't seen like catastrophic incidents so far, but they will come at one point. And then we need to be prepared to handle them and to stop them from happening again.
And in that context, who would be held accountable? I think this question was raised in one of the panel discussions, maybe yours, I don't remember. But where does accountability lie? Is it with physician, or is it with or both? Or
I don't like the term accountability. I don't like the frame of it, because it implies someone is at fault. But you cannot foresee everything. In the reality of a good doctor is that he's always making best educated guesses. This is what I do all the time. I think this is the most likely, most probable. So it needs to be accountable in the end, in my opinion, is always the patient, because he's the one who needs to carry the consequences. Now, that said, I do think it needs to be shared between all of the stakeholders. So I think patient needs to not say, oh, I'm the patient, you take care of me, I don't care. And if something goes wrong, I'll sue you in the end. Yeah. That's not, they need to accept the accountability for their own health. That's one thing. At the same time, that our accountability needs to be shared with the doctor, because he needs to know, okay, I'm doing something, or he needs to accept I'm doing something which is impacting people's lives, and worst case, shortening them. And at the same time, and I work a lot in risk management from the medtech side, at the same time, the companies need to take accountability and understand that it impacts the decisions and guides decisions, and therefore they need to just accept the accountability. And if it's spread, then I don't think that anyone will be mad at any decision that comes out, because you have it spread from who it's impacting, through who is guiding it, through what he's using to get there, and therefore you have it's like a tribunal in and on itself.
I get. So it's
co-regulating each other.
So it's like a community that self-regulates.
Homeostasis. That would be, I think, the medical term.
What is it? What's the medical?
Homeostasis.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to pretend I understand what that means, but I've come across it.
It means a balance between states, because there's not one state which is right. It is somehow.
Oh, okay. So it keeps everything in check. So
Exactly.
like a harmonious kind of arrangement. Yeah. I suppose it's easier said than done. It's kind of balancing act.
It always is, but it's like every day I have a colleague who's been with me with all of my ventures, including the hospital right now, and she knows that if she sees something going wrong, me communicating wrong or saying something wrong, although I'm her superior, she knows that she needs to come to me and tell me, simply in order to keep me in check. No? And so it's how systems grow, because they will naturally try to get into a state where they're as stable as possible. It's physics in the end. I see the same dynamics between people, and also between technology and people. It's the same kind of principle.
Yeah, I suppose like the markets or financial markets, we all find a way to find a natural sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Equilibrium or something. It's always a constant flux until we find this natural balance or something like that. But do regulators, or what role do the regulators have in all of this? Are national policies strong enough? Do they need changing, and how do you change it?
So they put the incentives out, which we mentioned earlier. So that's their responsibility, and they need to be careful to put the right incentives out, because I understand trying to keep patients safe, but if you make it so difficult that it's so expensive that to develop a AI solution or any medtech solution whatsoever, you will scare off a lot of people, and you will never get maybe some life-changing innovations to the patient, because it's just too difficult.
And how do you...
So they...
Sorry, please, yeah.
So they need to also take the responsibility for that.
And how do you influence that? How do you say, okay, we need to innovate safely within the confines of a system? Don't over-regulate, don't scare off innovation.
How do you influence that? That is a very good question. I know that big players do it with lobbyism.
Yeah.
But I would do it with humanism.
Okay.
So if it's benefiting everyone involved, why shouldn't it be done?
Yeah. I suppose it's communicating the outcomes of what you do, convincing policymakers that actually you have a right approach, that innovation is good when done in a certain way, doing it like ground up, involving all stakeholders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they need to, I think one thing that really breeds, it ultimately comes down to trust. And I think what breeds trust is that you show that you are also thinking about the things that can go wrong proactively, because convincing has a connotation of pitching, so when I think of someone convincing someone else, putting all of the reasons, this is why you should do it, this is why you should do it, but the balanced discussion with the regulator also needs to say, okay, these are some reasons why we shouldn't do it this way. My suggestion is that we start low and see how that goes, use the data, implement something new. So I talked about this in the other panel, incremental improvements, not disruptive improvement, but incremental improvement, keeping in mind safety and...
I like this. It feels very... So I'm just checking the time. 47 minutes. Gosh, okay. Last question then, because I need to wrap this up. But it feels very European. I look at social media a lot, and the Americans always, not everyone obviously, but they say that we're always over-regulating and blah, 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 blah. But it's equally, it could be argued that if they seek to disrupt all the time, Silicon Valley is moving fast and breaking things, and we do things differently in a very methodical way. I think this is just me speaking personally, but incremental is best. You test something, see if it works with all stakeholders, and you move in that kind of fashion. Sooner or later, you will get everyone's buy-in, as opposed to taking a hammer and going, and then forcing kind of regulators to like electric scooters. We've done it with product. You have to change now. You have to change. It's a bit more kind of forceful. I suppose it's a bigger conversation, really, but yeah.
I can go for days. It's exactly like you said, because one thing that we didn't touch on, if you force it like that, you cause friction.
Yeah.
And implementation friction in the STAR map is one of the negative factors. So if you cause too much friction, you will still not be able to land. And that also needs to be taken into account. Those people who working in the regulatory have for sure some good reasons to think the way they think, even if it's conservative. And me being in Germany, like a fun fact about me is that my expertise is valued everywhere more than in Germany specifically, because Germany is very wary and sometimes maybe even scared of innovation. Whilst the USA or the GCC, they hear me talking and share my thoughts, and they say, okay, we need more of this. I do think it is maybe a cultural thing. I do know as a doctor and a risk manager, I'm a clinical risk manager, aside from other things, I know that there's risks involved, but those risks need to be controlled and not control us.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? You remind me of something. So I think the German chancellor came back from China and saw the robots or something, and he came back and said everyone needs to work harder. So more hours.
Yeah, exactly. And no part-time, also not for parents.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, I don't know. Anyway. All right, man. I think I'm going to leave this now because it's already 50 minutes and I know you're busy. I need to wrap this up and it will probably take me a few days. But I really enjoyed this conversation. It's really interesting. And I'm trying to learn a lot about this myself on a personal level because I'm fascinated by where all this is headed, ethics and technology. And it's such a complicated topic. And it's difficult to get our heads around because it's all changing so fast. And there's so many different dimensions to it. Ethics alone is, from my perspective, it's different everywhere you go. I used to live in China, and China's so different. And you talk about trust, and trust, what does trust mean in a universal kind of context? It's like all these philosophical questions as much as technical. AI is all about trust. Ultimately, it's like we're talking about a technology that I suppose threatens our own identity and who we are as a species, let alone what we do for jobs. Everyone keeps talking about AI is going to replace jobs, blah, 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 blah. It's okay, yeah. Take my job, I don't care. But I
don't like it anyways.
Yeah, I don't mind. If AI wants to do the heavy lifting, okay. But it's something that goes deeper than that, much, much deeper. That goes right to the heart of, it's like Hollywood, isn't it? Like Blade Runner or something. But it's a very critical moment. And how we respond to it will determine where we go from here as a society.
100% agree, and it's better we create than we react, and that's why I ultimately decided to expose my thinking. As a kid, I was bullied a lot because they were calling me a philosopher. I guess you can say so.
That's not a bad name to have. I'm impressed. Yeah, I wish that more of us would be philosophers instead of entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley sense. I think that's missing, at least. Their kind of philosophical stance doesn't really fit well with the rest of us. It's like, and this is alarming, we all have to cooperate together better. So anyway, on that note, I'll leave you again. Thank you very much for that.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. It was awesome talking to you.
Likewise. Okay, cheers, dude. Okay, take care now. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.